I apologized to my sister in September. I told her I was wrong. I told her I was jealous. I said the word sorry out loud, looking her in the eyes, while she stood there nodding with the expression of someone forgiving something real. Something I had actually done. 8 months later, I found out she had been sleeping with my boyfriend, more than once. But that comes later. First, the café. A small place on Clement Street, wooden tables, the smell of cinnamon. I chose it deliberately. Neutral ground, nobody's territory. Lily didn't know why I picked this particular spot. She thought we were meeting to make up. She thought I had finally calmed down and was ready to move on. She thought she knew me well enough to predict this conversation. She was wrong. I arrived 20 minutes early, took a corner table back to the wall facing the door, ordered an Americano I had no intention of drinking, and waited. My name is Kara. I'm 29 years old. I have a small flower shop on the corner of Maple and Fifth. Opened it 3 years ago on my own without anyone's help. It always smells like eucalyptus and wet soil in there, and the cold dampness from the refrigerators where the roses stand. I understand flowers better than I understand people. That I didn't realize right away. There's something every florist knows. A plant starts dying before anyone can see it. A day before, sometimes two, something changes in the way the stem holds water. The way the petals respond to light. A professional sees it immediately. A regular person looks and says, "It's beautiful, everything's fine. What are you worried about?" For 3 years, I looked at my life like a regular person. Lily walked into the cafe at 12:20, 10 minutes late as always. She was wearing my gray coat, the one she'd asked to borrow 2 years ago. She was smiling. Wide, slightly guilty, that particular smile I'd known since childhood. The smile that said, "Come on, let's hug and forget about it." Lily always knew how to smile like nothing was happening. That was always her greatest talent. She waved at me across the room. I raised my hand. To understand what happened in that cafe, you need to start at the beginning, with Jake. With that dinner in November, 3 years ago, the first time I brought him to meet my family. Jake came into my life in February. The most unromantic day of February, the 12th, 2 days before Valentine's, when I was working 12-hour shifts and hated everything alive, including flowers. February 14th is my personal hell. Every year, people who don't think about flowers for 364 days suddenly remember that roses exist and show up looking like they're doing something deeply original. By the 12th, I was already standing knee-deep in red roses, hands full of thorns, head full of orders, and the door opened one more time. He walked in and said, "I need flowers for my mom, but I don't know anything about flowers, and red roses feel too obvious. Can you help?" That was the right thing to say. Not clever, not witty, just honest. He wasn't pretending to know. He came for help and said so directly. I helped. We chose orange tulips and mimosa branches. Something alive, not greeting card. He looked at each flower seriously, like it mattered. Like his mother's face when she opened the door was already there in front of him. He paid, said thank you, left, came back 3 days later. No reason. Just stopped by, said his mom loved the tulips, and asked what were those white ones in the corner. They were anemones. I explained. He listened. That's how it started. After that, he came on Fridays. Sometimes with coffee, 2 cups, 1 for me, milk no sugar. He remembered after the second time. Sometimes just to be there. He'd sit on the windowsill while I worked and we'd talk about nothing in particular. He was a sales manager at a construction company, boring job by his own description, but stable. 31 years old. Lived alone in an apartment on Divisadero. Cooked badly, admitted it freely. Within a month, he knew the difference between a peony and a ranunculus. Not because I drilled it into him, he just remembered. I noticed things like that. Within 2 months, we were together. He was a good person. I don't want to make him into a villain in retrospect. That would be dishonest and, more importantly, inaccurate. Jake was attentive, reliable, funny in the right doses. He remembered things I told him. He showed up when I asked. He didn't show up when I said I needed to be alone. For 9 months, maybe a little more, I was happy. Then November came, and I decided to introduce him to my family. My mom called a week ahead with that particular innocence in her voice. "Lily's coming too, you don't mind, do you?" I said, "Of course, she's my sister, why would I mind?" The question I would ask myself today sounds different. Why did my mom ask at all? I spent a long time convincing myself I was just jealous. That this was my problem, some old, ugly part of me that couldn't be happy for other people, that saw threats where there were none. Psychologists call it projection. I called it tiredness, a bad day, hormones, anything, as long as I didn't call it what it actually was. The first time I noticed was at that November dinner. Lily was 40 minutes late. Normal, she's always late. She came in from the cold, flushed coat hanging open, immediately loud, immediately the center of the room. Mom was delighted. Dad was delighted. I was delighted. This was Lily, my sister. I loved her. She saw Jake and said, "Oh, so this is him." She didn't say it to me. She said it to him. Jake laughed. They shook hands and somehow slipped straight into conversation, easy, no gap, as though I hadn't introduced them but simply happened to be standing nearby. I went to help my mom with the food. 20 minutes later, when I came back, they were still talking. Lily was telling some story, gesturing, and Jake was watching her with that smile I thought of as mine. That night, on the way home, he said, "Your sister's fun." I said, "Yeah, she is," and tucked something sharp somewhere deep inside, far enough that it wouldn't get in the way. Christmas was worse. My mom asked me to help with the food. Tradition, we always cook together. I spent over an hour in the kitchen. When I came out carrying a dish, I saw them on the couch. Lily was showing Jake something on her phone, her head almost on his shoulder. They were laughing quietly, privately, the way people laugh when they have a joke that belongs only to them. I set the dish on the table and said we were out of salt. Went back to the kitchen, stood there for a minute, then picked up the salt and came back out. Lily was in the armchair by then. Everything was fine. I was imagining things. That became the sentence I lived by for a year. She's just like that with everyone. A universal answer to any discomfort. Lily put her hand on his shoulder when she laughed. Just how she is, she's physical. Lily sent him something on Instagram. I caught the notification by accident. She messages everyone. At Dad's birthday in March, she sat next to Jake all evening, close, explaining something about her work, leaning in. Dad's birthday in March I remember separately. We were at a long table, about 10 people. I was at the other end, helping Grandma with the plates. Then got stuck in a conversation with Aunt Carol, who asks the same questions about the shop every single time. When I finally looked over toward Jake, Lily was saying something in his ear. Quietly. He was listening with an expression that wasn't social, wasn't polite, something more serious, more private. I stood up and walked over. Both of them shifted back slightly at the same moment. That small shift. I stored it away, the same as all the rest, into the box that was getting quite full by spring. Because what was I supposed to do? Say what? I think my sister is flirting with my boyfriend. At a family dinner on Dad's birthday with Grandma and Aunt Carol right there, Jake had never done anything obvious. Lily had never technically crossed a line, not one you could name out loud. She was just always a little closer than she needed to be. Then in late April, my mom called and said she was putting together a barbecue for the long weekend. Everyone was coming. It would be lovely. Was Jake joining? I said yes. I didn't know then that this barbecue would become the point of no return. That this was where I would finally say out loud what I'd been keeping in that box for nearly a year. And that I'd be made to apologize for it afterward. There's a state that I don't have an official name for, but every florist knows it. When you've worked long enough, your eye starts to see differently. Not the whole picture, just the parts. The color of a stem, the angle of a petal, how much water is left in the cells. It's an occupational thing. You stop seeing like a regular person and start seeing like someone who knows what to look for. That day at my parents' place, that mode switched on by itself. Probably because I'd spent too long trying to see the whole picture and ignore the details. It was early May. Warm but not yet hot, that brief window when California feels like a promise. My mom had set up in the backyard. A long table, a yellow checkered cloth, the paper plates my dad promises every year to replace with real ones and never does. She'd put flowers in mason jars, something yellow and white she'd picked up somewhere. My professional eye said, geranium and daisies. Simple, honest, I liked them. Jake was helping my dad with the grill. This had become their tradition already, third barbecue in a row. Dad was explaining something about temperature, Jake nodding seriously. I carried drinks from the car, set them on the table, sat down next to Aunt Margot, who never arrives without her potato salad. The first hour was fine. Then Lily arrived. Late, of course. She stepped out of her car in a white sundress with open shoulders. A white dress to a barbecue. I registered this the same instant I always notice the wrong color in an arrangement. White is not for smoke and charcoal. White is for being noticed. Red nail polish. Hair down, small earrings she'd bought last summer that I'd told her looked good on her. She said hello to everyone, hugged Mom, kissed Dad on the cheek. Then she walked over to the grill. I watched. Not in any obvious way. I was sitting with my glass, talking to Aunt Margot, nodding in the right places. But at the edge of my vision, that same professional edge, I saw everything. How Lily positioned herself next to Jake at the grill. How Dad went inside for something and left them alone. How she took the tongs out of Jake's hands, just took them, the way you take what's yours, and said something that made him laugh. How she turned something on the grate and her shoulder touched his. For a second, maybe less. Red nail polish on the black handle of the tongs, white dress in the smoke from the grill, his smile. The one I thought of as mine, details. Dad came back. Everything became normal again. We sat down, ate, talked. Lily was loud and funny at the table, she always is. I ate Aunt Margot's potato salad and told myself, she's just like that with everyone. After the food, people drifted. Aunt Margot and Mom had coffee. Dad worked on the grill. I helped clear the table. I didn't see where Lily was, didn't see where Jake was. 10 minutes passed. Maybe 15. Then I went inside for a trash bag, through the kitchen, and came out the other side onto the small side porch. They were standing there together, not embracing, not kissing, just standing close, too close for a conversation that could have happened at the table. Lily was saying something quietly. Jake was listening. When I came out, they both turned at the same moment, and both of them took a step back. That step back, I had seen it once before. Dad's birthday. I'd filed it away and closed the lid. The lid wouldn't close anymore. Something in me shifted quietly, almost without sound, like a thermostat clicking over. Not an explosion. Not yet. First, it was a very calm, very cold voice inside that said, "You are seeing this correctly. You have been seeing this correctly all along." "Kara," Lily said with a smile, "we were just talking." I hadn't asked for an explanation. I said nothing, just looked at her. White dress. Red nails, smoke in her hair. "Kara," she said again, differently this time, without the smile. And then the thing I'd been holding in that box for nearly a year came out. I hadn't planned to make a scene. That matters. Not because I want to look better, but because it's true. I wasn't going out to that porch with any intention. I was going for a trash bag. Just a trash bag on an ordinary May afternoon at a family barbecue. But when Lily said, "We were just talking," with that smile, with that tone, as though I were a small child with an overactive imagination, something in me decided it was enough. "I see how you talk to him," I said, quietly, still quietly. "I've been seeing it for a year. Kara." She dropped her shoulders with the look of someone who is very tired of this. Don't start what? This." She waved her hand at the air between us, a gesture that meant me entirely, my whole existence and every grievance attached to it. "Every time. You see things that aren't there." I heard the back door open, caught my mom on the porch out of the corner of my eye, then my dad behind her. I should have stopped. I know that. In retrospect, it's obvious. I should have said, "We'll talk later," and walked away. But a year is a long time to hold something, and that step back was still right in front of me. "You flirt with my boyfriend," I said, louder now. "At every family dinner, at every holiday, you're always next to him, always touching him, always laughing at everything he says. And when I notice, you tell me I'm making it up." "Kara," my dad said from behind my mom. A warning, oh my God. Lily rolled her eyes exactly like that, as though I had said something infinitely stupid. "I'm friendly. That's how I am with everyone. The fact that you see something in it is your problem, not mine." "With everyone," I repeated her words back to her. "With everyone, except somehow you're friendliest of all with my boyfriend specifically." "Kara, enough," my mom said. She had stepped fully out now, positioned herself next to Lily. I noticed that physically, the way they'd ended up on one side and I was on the other. People were just having a conversation. You're making a scene out of nothing. Out of nothing. Out of nothing, my mom repeated firmly. Lily hasn't done anything. I looked at Jake. He was standing slightly apart near the wall, hands in his pockets, looking at somewhere between me and the ground, saying nothing. That silence is what I remember separately from everything else. Not what he said afterward. Not his explanations or his words. That moment when he simply stood against the wall with his hands in his pockets and said nothing. He could have said anything. He could have said, "Kara, I understand why you're upset." He could have said, "Let's all calm down." He could have just said my name. He said nothing. "You've always been like this," Lily said, quietly, almost wearily. And that tone, tired and condescending, as though I were a chronic condition she'd learned to live with, was what finally broke something loose. "Like what?" I asked. "Like someone who sees what's happening? Like someone who dramatizes everything. All the time. You're paranoid, Kara. You've always been paranoid. And you've always been a little slut who needs everyone's attention, even if that attention belongs to her sister's boyfriend." Silence. The kind of silence that follows something breaking. You don't immediately understand what. You just hear everything go still and you know something can't be fixed. Lily looked at me. She wasn't crying, not at first. She just looked. Then her face broke. My mom stepped forward. My dad said my name in a voice he hadn't used since my childhood. Aunt Margot made a sound somewhere behind the table. Everyone had heard. Lily covered her face with her hands, and that's when I saw myself through their eyes, not the year before. Not the box full of moments, not that step back on the porch, not the white dress at the grill. They saw only this, Kara screaming at her sister while her sister stood there crying. Jake came to me, touched my elbow, said quietly, "Let's go." I went. We left within 10 minutes. In silence. The whole drive home, neither of us said anything, and that silence was a different kind from our usual quiet, the comfortable kind two people share when they're at ease together. This was the silence where something floats between two people and neither one wants to name it. My mom called the next morning at 8:30. I was already at the shop. I'd come in at 7 because I hadn't slept, and the shop was the only place where I knew what to do. Trimmed stems, changed water, rearranged the front display. Work that keeps your hands busy and leaves your head empty. Exactly what I needed. The phone vibrated on the counter. Mom. I watched it ring twice. Then I picked up, Kara, one word, my name. And from the way she said it, not Kara, hi, not Kara, how are you, I understood the conversation had already been built. She knew what she was going to say, knew how I would respond, knew how it would end. Mom, Lily is very upset, not how are you, not what happened. Straight to, Lily is very upset. I set the pruning shears down on the counter. Slowly, I hear that. Kara, what you said was very cruel in front of everyone. Aunt Margot was there, your father was there. I know who was there. Don't take that tone, a short pause. I understand you were upset, but you can't do that. The word you used is not a word a sister says to a sister. Outside the shop window, a bicycle went by, red, with a basket. I watched it until it disappeared around the corner. Mom, did you see why I got upset? I saw people talking on the porch. They were standing, Kara. Her voice shifted into that register, not angry, not cold, just final. The voice that meant, this door is closed, don't knock. You've been suspecting Lily of something she hasn't done for a long time now. We all see it. It's not good. Not for you, not for her, not for the family. We all see it, so they'd talked. There was a version of events they'd worked out without me, agreed on, settled into. And in that version, I was the problem. You need to call Lily and apologize, my mom said. Today. Mom, today, Kara. This isn't up for discussion. I held the phone and looked at the flowers in the front display. White tulips, pink peonies, eucalyptus branches, all living, all in their place, all legible. Okay, I said. I didn't go to Lily's that day. I didn't call for a week, not out of pride. Every time I started to dial, something inside me stopped. Not stubbornness, something else. Something that knew what I didn't know yet. But my mom called again. Then my dad, brief and awkward because he's not built for these conversations. But the fact that he called at all meant something. Then Jake said one evening, gently, without pressure, maybe it's time to call her. For the family's sake, for the family's sake. I went to Lily's the following Saturday. She opened the door in her home clothes, coffee in hand, looked at me, stepped aside without speaking as though she'd been waiting. We sat in the kitchen. She didn't offer me coffee. I didn't ask. I looked at her hands wrapped around her mug and thought about how you find words for something you don't want to say. At the shop, I sometimes help people choose flowers for difficult situations. Apologies, reconciliations, goodbyes. I know that words can be like flowers. Sometimes you choose not the ones you feel, but the ones the situation requires. I'm sorry, I said. What I said, that's not how you speak to someone. Like that, in front of everyone. I chose like that and in front of everyone deliberately, not at all and not ever. A small boundary I kept for myself. Lily was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. Slowly, with that expression I'd known how to read since childhood. Magnanimity. She was forgiving. Accepting my contrition as something deserved, something owed to her. As though I'd been in debt and had finally come to pay. I understand you're anxious about Jake, she said. Gently. But you have to trust people, Kara. Me and him, we're family. We're family. I looked at her and thought, you know what you've been doing, you know. And you're sitting here talking to me about trust. But I didn't say that out loud. Right, I said. Family. I drove home through the empty Sunday city. At the light on Maple, half a block from my shop, I stopped and sat there even after it turned green. Nobody honked behind me. I just sat and looked straight ahead. Then I drove on. The breakup with Jake happened in August. Quietly, the way things go quiet when both people already know, but neither wants to be first. In the end, he was first. He came in on a Friday, no coffee, first time in 2.5 years without coffee, and I understood before he opened his mouth. He talked about different directions and something shifting between them. The right words, careful, worn smooth on all sides so they wouldn't cut. I listened and nodded and thought about how the peonies in the refrigerator needed to be moved. They were too close to the fan. They'd freeze by morning. When he left, I moved the peonies. Then I closed up the shop, sat down on the floor behind the counter, and stayed there for a while. Just sat there. The crying came later at home that night, and they were strange tears. Not entirely for Jake, or not only for him. For something larger and less specific. For a year of seeing things clearly and convincing myself I was seeing them wrong. For the word sorry I had said out loud in someone else's kitchen, holding onto the last of my own dignity. For the way Lily had nodded accepting that word, with that expression. After that kitchen conversation, Lily and I existed in a kind of performed normalcy. She messaged sometimes. Memes, family news, once a photo of our childhood cat she'd found on an old phone. I replied. Briefly, evenly, within the range of what passes for a normal relationship. At Mom's birthday in October, we both showed up, both smiled, both helped with the food. Everything was fine. Fine is a very convenient word. It doesn't mean good. It means everyone has agreed to pretend. The shop did well that fall, better than usual, as though I'd poured into it everything that used to go somewhere else. I took on a new contract with a hotel on Lombard, started doing corporate orders, hired a part-time assistant for weekends. Work was legible. Flowers don't lie. They're either alive or they're not, and that's honest. November came with rain and early dark. I got used to 5 o'clock sunsets, a new routine, the quiet of the apartment, Fridays just being Fridays again. And then one night in early November, my phone rang. 1:23 in the morning. Number I didn't recognize. I'm not asleep at 1:23, rarely sleep before 2. It's what happens when you're up at 6 every day. I was lying in bed reading, phone on the nightstand. I picked up. I recognized the voice immediately, not because he was speaking clearly. The opposite. In that particular blurring, that specific way of forming words that belongs to someone who is drunk not in a happy way, but in a heavy, unavoidable way, I knew it was Jake. 3 months had passed. A new number, so he'd changed phones or the SIM. 1 in the morning. Drunk. I won't describe that call word by word, not because I don't remember, but because it wasn't a conversation in any ordinary sense. It was a monologue from someone who had been holding something until it became unbearable. That happens. You drink enough and something inside decides it can't anymore. That the weight is too much. That someone has to know. He talked for a long time. I listened without speaking. I didn't understand the full shape of it immediately. Not because he was unclear, but because the mind refuses certain things as real at first. You need a moment. Sometimes several moments. You lie there listening, and somewhere at the edge of your awareness you already know, but the center is still holding the line, still saying, "Wait, you're misunderstanding this." Then the line breaks. Lily, several times. The first time last winter, while we were still together. The last time not long before we broke up. Not once. Not an accident. Several times, over months, while I was at the shop moving peonies and telling myself she's just like that with everyone. While I was sitting in my sister's kitchen saying the word sorry. At some point, I noticed silence on the other end. He'd stopped. Fallen asleep or sobered up enough to understand what he'd said or changed his mind entirely. I don't know. I pressed end. The phone stayed in my hand. Outside it was raining, that fine November rain that doesn't stop, just changes intensity. I looked at it for a long time. The wet glass, the blurred lights of the street. Then I picked up my phone and wrote to Lily, "We need to meet this week." She replied within 7 minutes, even in the middle of the night. Of course, everything okay? 3 exclamation points. A smiley face. The kind you send when nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. I looked at those words for a long time, wrote back, yes, you pick the place, I'll fit around you. She chose that spot on Clement Street, the small café with the wooden tables and the smell of cinnamon. Wrote that it was cozy, she liked it there. I confirmed the time. Then I put the phone down and lay in the dark for a long time listening to the rain. I thought about the white dress at the grill, about that step back, about the red nail polish on the black tongs, about the way Lily had nodded in her kitchen, accepting my sorry with the expression of someone to whom it was owed. Owed. I didn't cry. Surprisingly, I didn't cry at all. I just lay there and thought, and somewhere inside something became very quiet and very cold and very clear. Clarity is a strange feeling, especially when it arrives late, especially when you understand that you were seeing things correctly from the beginning. You just wouldn't let yourself believe what you saw. I fell asleep toward morning. 3 days later, I walked into the cafe on Clement Street and took the corner table, back to the wall facing the door. Lily walked into the cafe smiling, exactly like that, with a smile, with ease, with the look of someone arriving for a pleasant meeting. My gray coat, hair pulled back, small crossbody bag. She scanned the room, saw me, waved. I raised my hand. She came over, gave me a quick hug from above, the habitual kind, and sat down across from me. Picked up the menu. Said the lattes here were good, she'd been with a friend last month. Said she'd finally had the coat properly cleaned, see, it looked brand new. Asked how the shop was doing, I answered, briefly, evenly. Shop's good. Yes, the coat looks fine. Yes, the lattes are decent. She wasn't sensing anything, or she was performing not sensing it. I watched her and thought about how good she was at this. Sitting like this, smiling, ordering a latte. The server came. Lily ordered. I said I still had coffee. When he left, I placed my hands on the table and looked at my sister. Jake called me, I said. The smile didn't disappear right away. It held for a moment, maybe a little longer, as though it hadn't received the signal yet. Then it faded. When? Lily asked. Interesting choice for a first word, not why, not what did he say. When? Early November, late at night. She picked up a napkin from the table. Started folding it along the edge, looking at it. He was drunk, she said, not a question, a statement. He was, I agreed. That doesn't change what he said. Kara. She put the napkin down and looked at me. That familiar register was back in her voice, the tired condescension. Drunk people say a lot of things. You understand that he could have just... Several times, I said. She went quiet. First time last winter, while Jake and I were still together. Last time not long before we broke up. Silence. The server brought her latte and set it on the table. Neither of us moved. That's not true, Lily said, quietly but firmly. Okay. He made it up or confused things. Or he was drunk, Kara, people in that state. Lily. I said her name without any particular intonation, just her name. She stopped mid-sentence. I didn't come here to argue, I said. I came to tell you that I know. I just wanted you to know that I know. Something in her face began to change. Slowly, the way light shifts when a cloud moves across the sun. Almost imperceptible at first, then more and more clear. You still won't believe him, she said, differently now, without the certainty. I already do. Why? Because he called drunk in the middle of the night and said, because I saw it, I said. I saw it the entire time. The barbecue, Christmas. Dad's birthday, that step back on the porch. I saw all of it and convinced myself I was imagining things. I looked at her steadily. And then I drove to your apartment and said sorry. Remember, Lily picked up her latte glass. Set it back down without drinking. Kara, it was complicated, you don't understand. Explain it to me. She opened her mouth, closed it. It just happened. We didn't plan it. Okay. Things between you two weren't great at that point anyway. You both felt it was. Lily. What? You're explaining to me right now why this was acceptable, I said. I can hear that. I just want you to hear it too. She went quiet, looked out the window at the street, at the people passing, at anything except me. Her fingers around the glass had gone slightly white. I waited. I didn't think it would hurt you this much, she said at last, quietly, almost to herself. I sat with that for a moment. She didn't think it would hurt me this much. Didn't think. That it would hurt me, as though the question was my reaction. As though, had I simply not been hurt, everything would have been fine. I see, I said. I stood up, took my jacket from the back of the chair. Kara, Lily leaned forward. Wait, we can still, no, I said, simply and very calmly. We can't. I put on my jacket, picked up my bag. I'm not going to scream at you, I said. I'm not going to tell you what kind of person you are. You already know. I just don't want to keep pretending everything is fine. I'm tired of pretending. Kara, we're family. I know we're family, I said. That's exactly why it hurts. I buttoned my jacket, looked at her one last time. She was sitting with the latte she'd never touched, and for the first time in the entire conversation, she didn't know what to say. Her face was open, almost childlike. The face I had known since she was born, the face I'd known for 25 years. I knew it. I just knew something else now, too. Take care of yourself, Lily, I said, and I left. Outside it was cold. That November cold that smells like rain even when it isn't raining. I walked down Clement Street and thought about nothing in particular. About the shop, that I needed to order more eucalyptus. The last batch was running low. About Jess working until 6. About the soup I'd made yesterday that was still at home. Ordinary thoughts. My thoughts. 2 blocks from the café, I stopped in front of a flower shop window. Someone else's, not mine. They had chrysanthemums in the display. White, full, dense, good ones. Fresh cut, properly done. They'd last a long time. I looked at them for a minute, then I took out my phone and called my mom. She picked up after the second ring. Kara, is everything okay? Yes, I said. Mom, I need to tell you something, not right now when you're home and have some time. Can you do tonight? A pause. Of course, what happened? Nothing terrible, I said. Just a conversation that should have happened a long time ago. I put the phone away, stood there another moment by the window, white chrysanthemums behind the glass. Beautiful. They'd last a long time. I walked toward my shop. That's the whole story. I mean, that's where the story ends. Not that everything became simple and good after that. I mean that right there, on that corner, with my phone in my hand and someone else's chrysanthemums behind the glass, something closed. Not loudly, without ceremony. My mom listened for a long time that evening, stayed quiet in the right places. At the end she said, I didn't know. I said, I know you didn't. Then she cried a little, and I cried a little, and we made plans to see each other the following week. With my dad, it was harder. He needs time with things like this. But he called on his own a few days later, said little, but said what mattered. I haven't spoken to Lily since. She wrote once, a long message, a lot of words. I read it carefully and didn't reply, not out of cruelty. Some conversations have already happened. There's no point repeating them. I didn't call Jake. I don't know what he was hoping for from that late-night call. Forgiveness, maybe. Relief, something. That's not my question to answer. My shop is doing well. The eucalyptus came in on Wednesday, good quality, fresh, smells right. Jess now works 3 days a week instead of 2, and we've found a rhythm together. She remembers things the first time. That's rare. On Fridays, I sometimes buy myself a coffee. Milk, no sugar. Here's what I've understood, not all at once, gradually, over these months. The hardest part wasn't what she did. And it wasn't what he did. The hardest part was that I saw it. I saw it from the very beginning, saw it correctly, and still chose not to trust what I was seeing. I don't make that choice anymore. That's probably the only thing worth taking from all of this. Not wisdom, not a lesson with a tidy bow on it. Just this: I trust what I see now. And as it turns out, that's enough.